Morning all. UFC video today. Yes, so we're going to talk about Darren the Gorilla Till today. Obviously not on the UFC roster for a bit. Hopefully will be soon. But yeah, we're going to talk about the Gorilla. But before I do, just a quick shout out to obviously the main event that went down this weekend in Kansas City. Arnold Allen against Max Holloway. What a fight. Fantastic performance by both fighters. Arnold Allen didn't get the win. His winning streak in the UFC grinds to a halt, but Max Holloway, a similar position to Colby Covington in the Kamaru Usman era of the welterweight division. He's been the second best guy for so long. You know, obviously Alexander Volkanovski is the undisputed champ. Puts his title on the line against the interim Yair Rodriguez, hopefully soon. But Holloway's been number two. He's been in that horrible position of he's quite clear ahead of the pack, the chasing pack, the rest of the contenders, but he's in that sort of no man's land where he is the number one contender. But he's faced Volkanovski 3 times, and say what you will about the first and second fight, he's lost 3 times, and unfortunately for him, the most definitive loss that Volkanovski put a real stamp on, a real marker on, was the most recent. You know, if Volkanovski had dominated him in, say, the first fight, and then the second and third were close, Max has clawed his way again to a number one contender spot, then there might be some appetite for that fight, but I don't think there will be. I think the only way Holloway becomes the champion at featherweight again is if Volkanovski, say, beats Yair. You could say he's then cleaned out the division well and truly, and then perhaps if he moves up to lightweight, then Holloway gets a real shot at becoming the champ again. But so Max Holloway, fantastic performance, shows that there's levels to the game, but didn't dominate, didn't destroy Arnold Allen. Arnold Allen went a full 25 minutes for the first time in his UFC career. It's his first main event against the second best guy in the division, and he did himself proud. Holloway did enough to get the job done. He was just that micro step ahead in the vast majority of the fight aspects. Allen made some good adjustments. The second round, he hit Holloway with some fucking tremendous shots. Max Holloway in his 10-11 year UFC career has never been dropped, and the way he ate the shots from Arnold Allen, particularly his overhand lefts, it's not hard to see why he's never been dropped. What a warrior. But Arnold Allen, like I said, he was number 4. I haven't checked the rankings this week. I doubt he's going to drop that much, because his stock won't drop. He did himself proud. You know, if he was going to lose, that was the best case scenario. He went 5 rounds in a close fight. I think it was 4 rounds to 1 on 2 of the judges' scorecards, which sounds pretty dominant, but they were close rounds. You know, he dropped Allen in the final 2 seconds of the 5th round, when, to be fair, Allen lunged forward in a wild way, chasing that last punch to knock Holloway out decisively. But what a fight. Arnold Allen, obviously he's one of my favourites, probably in the featherweight division, if not the UFC, but he did himself proud, and yeah, no shame in that loss whatsoever. Max Holloway is one of the greatest featherweights in the UFC period. He's definitely in the top 3. You know, obviously Volkanovski's probably the number 1 featherweight in UFC history, because he's beat Jose Aldo. He's been a long time champion. He's beat pretty much everyone. Jose Aldo, you could probably say number 2. It's tight between Volkanovski and Aldo, but if one's first, the other's second, then Max Holloway's definitely 3rd. So no shame in that loss for Arnold Allen. Right, anyway, so big up to those guys, fantastic. Obviously Edson Barboza in the co-main event, what a knockout. Oh my god, unbelievable. But yeah, I've been chatting on 5 minutes. Let's get on to Darren Till. So as I said in my first UFC video, Darren Till, my favourite fighter. He's the one I want to win the most, the one I'm most invested in. When he lost against Derek Brunson, I behaved like a child. I switched the I think I was playing on my brother's Xbox through BT Sport. I switched the Xbox off straight away. I stormed outside. I was smoking at the time, so I stormed outside for a fag. And it's, yeah, rage quit. The gamers of this world would call it. I'm not a gamer, so I wouldn't say that, but that's what they'd say. But yeah, Darren, so let's set the scene. So Darren Till asked for to be withdrawn from his UFC contract. Now he says he wants a bit of time away. He's looking to come back to UFC after 2 years. The UFC has said they're not in the business of bringing people back, but history has shown that has happened. You know, you see the likes, I think, just off the top of my head, Fabrizio Verdun, BJ Penn. I might have to check that, but there's been a few. And shout out to the YouTube channel MMA On Point. They do fantastic videos a couple of times a week, and I think on some of their like redemption arc videos they've mentioned, you know, more than a few fighters who've come away from the UFC, come back and achieved. Let alone fighters that have just gone away from the UFC, come back and done okay. There's been some ones who've come back and achieved in a big way. So why has he asked for this time? Obviously he's on a 3-fight losing streak, 3-fight losing skid, whatever you want to call it. Oh, go on then, cyclist. So you could probably say it might be career preservation. Maybe it's a case of he wants to jump before he's pushed. I don't think the UFC would push him out even if he lost the 4th in a row, because he's such a big star. He's so popular with the UK audience, the European scene, on a worldwide level, obviously because of his charisma, his personality, how game he is, the shit he talks, his relationship with Khamzat Chimaev. And Chimaev is one of the most dominant fighters in the UFC, one of the biggest rising stars. Maybe not so much in terms of personality nowadays, because obviously he's not very popular after the last weight issue, but his performances cannot be denied. So, and Darren's, you know, the Smash Bros, they've struck up a real close kinship, close bond. So I don't think Darren was in any sort of danger of being booted, but perhaps he wanted to jump before he's pushed. I don't know. So the main issue is injuries. He's been interviewed by the Mike Bisping and Anthony Smith's Believe You Me podcast. I think he did another one on ESPN, where he said that, you know, he was advised time and time again by Hunter Campbell and the likes in the UFC to take some time, get your knee fully sorted, but he just kept pushing on for fights. And I think that they would have been frustrated with him for a long time, because yeah, he's game. He'll take on anyone anywhere. Maybe not Yoel Romero, but he'll take on anyone anywhere, anytime, any place, like a lot of these fighters say. But I think Darren actually would. And that attitude has perhaps been the detriment to his body. I think he needs to, in my humble opinion, I'm not an MMA fighter, I've never had a competitive proper fight. I used to do judo as a kid and this, that and the other, and obviously you have things out and about with nights out and stuff, but I'm not a fighter. I'm just looking at it from a fan's perspective, someone who tries to study the sport, obviously not to an analyst level, but I do try and take notice of the little nuances, the little niche points, but overall this is from the standpoint of someone who gives a shit about Darren Till and his career. So I'm not a scouser, I'm not from Liverpool, but I really wanted to do well. So where's it sort of gone wrong? Obviously the knee's been an issue, but his form, it's a bit of a confusing one, because if we look at the last 3 fights, so he joined the middleweight division, won against Kelvin Gastelum in a split decision. I know I said the last 3, but I've already started. The split decision win, which, to be honest, I scratched my head at, because alright, he didn't knock him out, but he was clearly the better fighter. Calvin hit him with a couple of good shots. Calvin took him down a couple of times, but Darren bounced straight back up. He was elusive. He negated the threat, and bearing in mind, Kelvin Gastelum had just been in an absolute all-out 5-round war with Israel Adesanya, and prior to, well, even if you count Adesanya's losses against Pereira, who he's just avenged the loss to, and Jan Blachowicz at light heavyweight, Adesanya wore and took far more damage in the Gastelum fight than he did in those two fights, probably combined. Even though he was TKO'd and he won the Gastelum fight, you see the state of his face afterwards. He looked like he'd been smashed to bits. So Kelvin Gastelum was the man at middleweight, you know, one of the top contenders. Dangerous man. And Darren Till went up to middleweight off a 2-fight losing skid at welterweight and just completely negated that threat. Fought the clever fight, did enough. Then he fights, that's 2019. Then he 2020 in Yas Island in Abu Dhabi fights Robert Whittaker in what was probably a #1 contender fight. Because, you know, Izzy for a while has said that he wants to fight Darren Till. That's probably gone away now, because obviously Till's left the division after he lost a couple, but particularly after the Robert Whittaker fight, Adesanya would have still wanted to fight Till. Yeah, very close fight. Till drops him in the first with a lovely crushing elbow. Gives Whittaker one of the most stressful fights of his life with his feints, his footwork, his movement, etc. But he did his knee, I think, in the 3rd or 4th round, because I remember watching it at work with my mate on a night shift, and because of the no crowd, you could hear him say to Colin Heron, my knee's fucked, and he didn't have that same bounce in the 4th or 5th round that he usually does. So that might have been the start of the knee problems. Obviously he loses that, a decision. Whittaker gets 2 takedowns in the last round, I think, or in the 4th or 5th, or in the 5th, and he loses that decision, but it was razor close. And Robert Whittaker, a bit like Covington and Holloway, is the #1 contender at middleweight, and will be for as long as Izzy Adesanya's a champion, because he's beaten everyone apart from Izzy. That's the only fight, the only hill he cannot climb is the hill of Israel Adesanya. So yeah, again, so he's lost his unbeaten record at middleweight. He's 1-1, but there's no shame in that defeat whatsoever. It's like, as I've alluded to, Whittaker's one of the top dogs at middleweight, and he did not look out of place, and he gave Whittaker some real moments. Then he fights, he has to put out the fights with Jack Manson and Marvin Vettori through injuries. Then he fights Derek Brunson in 2021 September card, Paddy Pimblett's UFC debut. Looks good on the feet, looks a little bit limited, and again, who am I to criticise, but it was just the 1-2, 1-1-2. But looks good, starts well, but then he just cannot defend a takedown for his life and gets smashed on the ground. Elbow to fuck. I think it goes to the 3rd. He rolls onto his front. A lot of people would say that's him giving up, giving his back for the easy get out. You know, if you're gonna lose, gun to your head, if you're gonna lose, you'd rather have to tap and get choked out in get choked and tap in a few seconds than get any more of Derek Brunson's elbow smashed into your grid. I don't think he gave up, but he rolled. His wrestling defence, his escapes weren't there, as people like Mike Bisping have alluded to afterwards, and the tap. Fairly quick tap, but the tap. So he goes off to Sweden, strikes up this unbelievable relationship with Khamzat Chimaev, and you think, right, Chimaev is one of the most dominant wrestlers in the UFC. Darren Till's one of the best technical strikers in the UFC. They got something to offer each other here. But the main takeaway is Darren Till is going to get a lot better at wrestling. You know, he said for a while that, you know, oh, it's really hard to take me down. He's like, if you can take me down, you've got to be some sort of special kind of wrestler to keep me there. And against Derek Brunson, now Derek Brunson's an excellent wrestler, but he made it look so easy. So he's training with Chimaev. He's present for Chimaev's fight against Burns, against Kevin Holland. You know, they've got all the Smash Bros videos. It's looking good. You know, Till turns up to All-Star MMA off the plane, trains straight away, gets his ass kicked, turns up again, keeps turning up. So the comeback. He was meant to fight in the July card last year at the O2, pulls out because of injury, or he wasn't quite ready, I don't think he was meant to. He said on the BT Sport podcast with the likes of, it was Adam Catterall, Nick Peake and Mike Bisping, he didn't feel he was ready, which is a big thing to admit, and people like Chael Sonnen have alluded that Darren Till is too honest for his own good, perhaps. But there we go. Then he gets booked against Dricus du Plessis, who was below Till in the rankings, an up and coming, but a lot of people would have favoured Till because, you know, Dricus is not known as a pure wrestler, but he's got that in his game. But Till's been training with Chimaev, he'll negate that. Dricus is big, powerful, and Till's quicker, he's slicker, he's more technical on the feet, and he's more precise. And he's got a killer left hand, killer elbow game. You know, he's from a Muay Thai boxing background, so the art of 8 limbs, whatever they call it, you know, his kicks, his knees, his elbows, they're going to be there. He's out training in Thailand. He's not back in Liverpool. His camp, his entire camp, from what I could see, following him on Instagram, was in Thailand with Brendan Loffman. Not a bad person to train with, by the way. Probably the best featherweight outside of the UFC currently. Unbelievable fighter in the PFL. He's been friends with Brendan for a long time. Obviously, both Northern lads. But yeah, he's not training with Team Calgon in Liverpool. He's not got Hamzat training with him for his fight camp. I don't know why. And like I said, Darren was there for the Gilbert Burns fight. For Hamzat, he was there for the Kevin Holland fight. I don't want to say to Hamzat, why weren't you there for him? But it's a question that needs to be asked. I don't know. Hamzat has since come out and said that, you know, if Darren had trained with him, he would have beaten Dricus. Don't know. Perhaps Darren was in a different headspace, but he was trained, don't get me wrong, he was training his arse off in Thailand, fit as a fiddle, and that proved, because in the first round against Dricus, he took a fuckload of punishment, and if he wasn't fit as a fiddle, he would have wilted. And on the second round, after getting his ass handed to him and his face punched in, he came back. But yeah, he was training in Thailand, and he looked so slim. I mean, they're all slim, but he looked skinny. He's got quite big legs on him, quite big thighs, but his upper body, his torso, he looks so skinny. And next to Dricus, it's just like totally different. And Dricus said post-fight, he's like, he respects Darren Till as a competitor. He's like, but he's not big enough, he's not strong enough to be a middleweight. So is that something he's going to focus on going forward, being bigger and stronger? Because he said to Mike Bisping in the fight week that he could make weight at 170, but we all seen the troubles he had. You know, that he missed against Wonderboy. I think he missed earlier on in his UFC career. You know, he really struggled to make weight against Tyron Woodley and Jorge Masvidal. But yeah, the size difference. I remember watching Darren against Calvin Gastelum. Now, Calvin's a smaller, shorter bloke, so perhaps it made him look more pronounced, but he just looked thick. Thick back, big arms, huge legs. He looked swole as a middleweight, and against Dricus, he just looked so skinny. And it proved he had no answer whatsoever to the wrestling. And a few times, particularly in the second and third, particularly in the third round, Dricus took him down just so easy. There was no real technique. He just sort of pushed him over. Like I said, he got shoved up against the fence in the first round, had his face beaten in for about 2.5 minutes, refused to yield, showed unbelievable toughness and heart. Second round, he had Dricus on toast, because Dricus was knackered, Dricus was gassed. And that's where that fitness, that cardio from training in Thailand in the humidity with these Russian killers he said he was training with, and on the bikes and running up the hills and all this sort of thing. But he just didn't pull that trigger. Now, that is more of a mental thing. You know, he hit Drickus with some solid shots, and he was more technical, he was precise, he was finding the target, but he didn't jump on him with the confidence that he had when he jumped on Cowboy Cerrone back in the day. Even when he was advancing against Stephen Wonderboy Thompson. I know that was a much closer fight than some people give Wonderboy credit for, and a lot of people would argue that Wonderboy won. I don't know. I'm not that much clued into the kickboxing, Muay Thai, karate sort of world to be able to give you a definitive answer. I know Darren dropped Wonderboy, Wonderboy didn't drop Darren, and Darren dropped him in the 5th round, so perhaps that was what swung it. But yeah, so the frustration comes because he just didn't have the confidence in himself to pull the trigger, and I don't know where that comes from, because he could have jumped on Drickus and knocked him out, but he didn't. Then in the 3rd round, Drickus comes back, another fairly simple takedown. Darren rolls onto his front to try and escape, rear naked choke, taps even quicker than he did against Derek Brunson. Not judging, I'm not judging, because you've got a man of that size and strength with all his body weight on your back, and he's fucking wrenching your neck. Yeah, fair enough. I would have tapped it probably half a second, barely in a few seconds. So it's like, well, where's all that work with Hamzat? Or Hamzat, you know, I thought that was the primary reason to go over to Sweden to train with Hamzat, was to get better at wrestling. If anything, looks even worse. He said it was caught on camera, him saying to Bruce Buffer that he's pulled his ACL again, ACL tear, so his knee's gone, which any wrestler will tell you that if your knee's not working, you ain't going to be able to wrestle properly. So there you go, there's the answer. You know, people say, you hear fighters say it again and again, it's not the kickboxing or the jiu-jitsu that tears the knees apart, it's the wrestling. So where does he go from here? I'm nearly home, so I'm going to wrap this up. Where does he go from here? I'd like to see him, because he's out the USADA pool now. He can go and take some fucking steroids, or go and have stem cell therapy, whatever, to fix his knee for good, and then maybe go down the boxing route or bare knuckle route. Just not so much to build his way back to the UFC yet. I mean, there's rumours about him fighting the winner of Luke Rockhold and Mike Perry, but I don't think that's true. I just want to see him knock a few people out, just to get that confidence of smacking someone on the chin and seeing them go down, just to get that confidence back, because he was starching people in his early UFC career and pre-UFC in Brazil. So this couple of years, I think the main priority has got to be just get out of the spotlight of the UFC, fix his knees, fix his body, take some real time to fix his body. He can still fight, you know, whether he does some kickboxing fights, some Thai boxing fights, some actual boxing fights. See, no strain really on the knees. You know, I think he just needs to take a step back from MMA, fix himself, knock a few dudes out to get that confidence and good feeling back, and then gradually, once his body's completely fixed, train. And I think he needs to get back to Team Cowbomb, because obviously he was all over the place last year, training with Kamzat, training with Brendan Loughman in Thailand. I think he needs to be back to one place under his mentor, Colin Herron, because, you know, he was doing all his own stuff, media. He was on his own fight week. I know Brendan was there, but all the UFC people that, you know, there was no manager with him to help him out. He was doing it all himself, taking it all on his shoulders. And it's just, yeah. So I would say he just needs to fix his body, knock a few dudes out in a different sport, get that confidence back, fix his brain, reconnect with Team Cowboy and Colin Herron, because I've seen on Instagram, obviously Colin Herron is Tom Aspinall's mentor, his coach, but Tom Aspinall's spending a lot of time, I think it's at GK, and going to other gyms, because obviously he's a heavyweight contender, he needs to train with more heavyweights. So not taking away from anyone else at Team Cowbomb, but perhaps there's that void there for Darren to come back into and be, there's not the golden goose or the belle of the ball, but be the man that Colin Herron can really take under his wing again. One thing I do want to address is everyone's shitting on him, saying, oh, he's shit, he's lost 5 of his last 6. Well, let's look at that last 5 of the last 6. Working from the most recent backwards. Drickus du Plessis, obviously Not a great performance by Darren, but we said about the problems he had with his knee during the fight. Dricus is probably going to be Adesanya's next fight. You know, he's up and coming, big, strong, tough guy. It's like a fucking train. He smashed Derek Brunson. You know, he smashed people prior to that. He's a real up and comer. When Derek Brunson beat Darren Till, Derek Brunson was well on his way to another title shot till he ran into Jared Cannonier. You know, he beat Edmund Shabazian. He'd beaten everyone else really, apart from obviously Cannonier, who he lost to after that. And then who did he lose to prior to his sort of retirement, if you will? Whittaker. Looking back again, 2020, August 2020. Been up all night with the kids. Robert Whittaker, as I said, there's no shame in that loss whatsoever. He went toe to toe with the second best guy in the middleweight division. That's fine, not a problem. I've done this the wrong way around, really. Jorge Masvidal, he collided with Jorge Masvidal at the worst possible time at the start of his run of the mythical 2019 Jorge, when he was the best fighter on the planet, probably. He got clipped. He put Masvidal down in the first 10 seconds. Masvidal was a wily veteran. He came back in. He was at the top of his game. Till was just still developing. See, the weight cut has got to be an issue as well, and he got clipped. Fair play. Masvidal was, well, you see what he did to Ben Askren and Nate Diaz that year. Before that, he faced Tyron Woodley when Tyron was at the height of his prime. That was probably Tyron's best performance of his championship reign. It was his last defense before he lost it to Kamaru Usman and then started to decline. So those five losses: Tyron at his peak, Jorge at his peak, Robert Whittaker, Brunson in the resurgence of Blonde Brunson, and then the up-and-coming Dricus du Plessis. It's not like he went out and lost 5 times to Journeyman, you know. I still believe in Darren Till. Like I said, I want him to fix his body, fix his mind, start smiling again, smash some people, knock some people out, and come back. Because if he starts knocking people out, I don't know if he's going to go on maybe back to Cage Warriors or anything like that for a little spell, a short-term contract, maybe Bellator. I don't know what the crack is with the UFC. He said he doesn't want to do anything behind Dana's back. Fair play. But if he smacks a couple of dudes in the boxing world, maybe has a couple of Thai boxing fights, maybe have a big bare-knuckle fight against Luke Rockhold or Mike Perry, if he knocks them out and shows good progress, shows that he's had operations, he's fixed his body, and if he's make it, the UFC, despite what they've said to him, they will welcome him back with open arms. He is a huge draw. You know, Paddy Pimblett, although I like Paddy as well, I think he's going to get found out again sooner rather than his UFC stardom might be burning out sooner than thought. Obviously, Tom Aspinall's on the rise. You've got Arnold Allen, Jack Shaw. There's a few others. Leon Edwards is obviously the champ at welterweight, but there's always going to be that thirst. And imagine the comeback of Darren Till. Khamzat will probably be a champion at some point in the next 2 years, whether that be at middleweight, probably, or welterweight, or going to have the opportunity to be the champion. So, yeah, there will always be a place for Darren Till, and he's 30. He's a year older than me. He's 30. I think he's about 18 months older than me. So, you know, coming back at 32, 33, it's not the end of the world. You know, if he was further, he keeps saying, oh, I'm still young, I'm only 30. Yeah, but he's got time. If he was wanting, say if he was 34, 35 now, wanting to come back at 37, 38, different story. But yeah, what do you guys think? Do you think Till is washed up? Do you think it was just a case of he was never as good as we thought he was? Do you think the hype was all just smoke? I think he's going to be a success. I think he'll be back in the UFC, and I think he's going to take some fucking names. But yeah, like, comment, subscribe. Tell me what you think in the comments below, and I shall see you again. Cheers.